Yeah, now it's now started.
Okay, so we are now recording, and welcome to the County Parenting Hub. And Ali from Terrence Higgins Trust will be talking about sexuality and gender, and we will be moving over to her very swiftly. Thank you for being so patient with today's session. But just to let you know, we can't admit Harriet, this one.
Okay.
Sorry. Just to let you know, to fit in with the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, and Suffolk County Council policy, we have asked for the attendees to consent to this recording, and they have written their consent in the message box. PD has emailed a message to parenting@suffolk.gov.uk to give consent to this being recorded. Okay, so I'd like to introduce you to, I feel like I need a drum roll. I'd like to introduce you to Ali from Terrence Higgins Trust. So over to you, Ali. Thank you.
Hello. Right, okay, so once again, I'm having problems uploading this document. This is hilarious, absolutely hilarious. So let's have a look at the application window. No, that's not what I want. It's not the Chrome tab, and it's not the entire screen. Harriet, any advice on, I have the PowerPoint up and running. So I suppose if I put that up and then do my entire screen, that would kind of work, wouldn't it? I think that's probably what I'm going to have to do. I hope I don't cause any feedback doing this, but here we go. Right, okay, so ladies and gentlemen, hello. My name is Ali. I'm from the Terrence Higgins Trust, and I'm going to talk to you about gender and sexuality and talking to your young people about this today. So apologies for the late start and everything like that. So basically, for those of you who don't know, we are a sex positive sexual health charity, started in the 1980s, and we do relationship and sexual health education throughout Suffolk. And obviously this is not a confidential space. If you would like some questions answered, please email, unless they're kind of anonymous. As long as we wouldn't know who you're talking about, then that would be fine. I can answer those questions. The NSTAASQ stands for there is no such thing as a silly question. There's only questions you don't know the answer to yet. So please feel free to ask. There are people with lots of different ranges of knowledge throughout Suffolk. So we are able to answer any kind of question you have about this. So first of all, I want to separate the two, because gender and sexuality are two different things. So gender is who you are, who you feel you are inside. So that could be male or female. It could be non-binary. It could be trans or transitioning or transitioned. Now, some of these words may be new to you. So non-binary means that they don't feel specifically female, but they don't feel specifically male either. And they could be anywhere along this continuum line between male and female. For example, someone who may present as female, and we used to call them a tomboy, would possibly, not always, but possibly be a non-binary person. Transitioning or transitioned is talking about them actually transitioning from one gender to a different gender, and either doing that physically or mentally, or through clothing or through medication or anything like that. So they actually want to change their gender. It doesn't matter if they're not doing anything about it. They are still trans if they decide that they are not the gender they were given at birth. Now, what I mean by that is when we're born, we come out of mother's vagina and the doctor or nurse goes, "Oh, Mrs., you have a wonderful bouncing baby," and says either girl or boy. That's mainly going on what is presenting on the outside. It's mainly going on genitals. And that's not always true for everybody. They don't feel the gender that their genitals give them. So I know this can be a bit kind of mind exploding for some people, but this actually happens quite a lot. There is a statistic and about intersex babies. Now, when I say intersex, I mean a person who is biologically on the outside one gender, so they may have a penis and testicles, but inside they might also have ovaries, or another way around. On the outside, they may present with a vulva, which is the collective term for vagina, clitoris, labia, but on the inside, they might actually have semen producing testicles, but they're inside the body. And yeah, it's just completely mind exploding. However, there are as many intersex babies born as there are ginger haired babies born. We just don't know about it. And we don't know about it until they have an X-ray, or medical problems show it up, or, you know, they start to want to have children, and, you know, we don't know about it. It is not something to be worried about. It is just cells that are reproducing in the body, in the mother's womb when the baby is made. There is no right or wrong. There is nothing abnormal about this. This is perfectly normal. Okay. It does pose more problems for the actual babies themselves when they grow up. However, that's who they are. So gender is who you are, or how you identify. So somebody may be transitioning and identify as a female, but they were biologically designated a male at birth by the doctor or nurse. Sexuality, on the other hand, is who you find attractive. So we know words such as homosexual means that you are attracted to someone of the same gender. Heterosexual is you are attracted to someone of a different gender. So as a female, you may fancy specifically male. As a male, you may fancy specifically female. It could also be somebody who is non-binary, specifically finds females attractive, or non-binary specifically finds males attractive, and the other way around. So heterosexual is finding somebody of a different gender to yourself attractive. Bisexual means that you actually find two genders attractive. This one will be the same gender as yourself, and then another gender. So for example, a female bisexual would also find other females attractive, but may also find somebody from another gender attractive, whether that is male or non-binary or whatever. Lesbian, we know, we've heard this word before, is a female who finds other females attractive. Gay is normally given to a male who finds other males attractive. However, the term gay can now also mean homosexuals and heterosexual and lesbians. So homosexual and gay applies for same gender couples. Now, you don't have to know people's preferred gender or preferred sexuality. There is no need for you to know this unless you are talking to them about their sexual health, or you are talking to them about their medical information. And I appreciate a lot of people will be fearful of not knowing somebody's gender or sexuality. But there is no need to be fearful at all. It is not something that you need to know unless you're talking to them about their sexual health or their medical history. To kind of explain it in a more visual way, we also have the gender-bred person. So you've got the brain at the top, which is how you think of yourself as your identity. You have the heart, which is your orientation, who you feel you are inside as well. You have the expression, which could be things like clothing or the way you move. And then you also have the sex, which is the biology of what's actually going on with your body. On the right-hand side, we've got things about gender identity, so how you actually see yourself, gender expression, biological sex, and sexual orientation. All of these have a line against them from one side to another. You do not need to be either on the left or on the right. You can be anywhere along this line. And if you think of them like sliders moving flexibly all the time, fluctuating throughout your life, because somebody can change throughout their life. They can be quite happy as one gender, and then down the line, as they get older, they might want to change. They can be quite happy finding some particular genders attractive, and then they might want to change, excuse me, throughout their life. So this is not an either or situation. It can be fluctuating. Now, whether they decide to do something about this is entirely up to them. If your young person is talking to you about the fact that they, as their gender, they do not identify with the gender they have been given, what they're meaning is they are questioning whether they are that gender that the medical person gave them as a baby. They don't suddenly want to change into a different gender. They're just questioning. Sometimes they can be quite affirmative in, I do not feel the gender I was born, and they want to change. But this isn't always the case. They have to be 18 before medical decisions can be taken. So there is no taking them to a clinic and getting them changed straight away. This is not going to happen, which for those young people who are really passionate about wanting to change their gender, this can be really frustrating. Those who decide that actually they don't fancy particular genders anymore, so they're changing in their sexual orientation. Again, they don't always know for sure. It can be how they feel. It can be what they're attracted to. But it doesn't suddenly mean that they're going to go out and definitely have relationships with somebody else of a different gender. And it can just be something they're questioning. Now, obviously, they have to be 16 or over to consent legally to sex. Now, that's whatever sexual orientation they are. The law used to be different and have different age groups, but it is now 16 for any gender and any sexual orientation. If you are unsure about how to talk to your young person about this, the best thing is to listen to them and make sure they know how to look after their sexual health, no matter what kind of sex they are having. So going back to gender, we are used to female and male being the dominant genders. So normally it's like if you're filling in a form, there'll be a tick box, male or female, and there'll be no other boxes. And our society is based around faith, our experiences, and the majority. But as we know, this isn't always the case. And if we're going to be fully inclusive, we need to make sure that everyone is included, no matter how small their minority is. So you are sexed by a doctor when you're born according to your genitalia, but we all start off as female in the womb, which is really interesting. And it's the Y chromosome in the sperm that decides whether it's going to change, the fetus is going to change into a male baby or a female baby. And sometimes that change isn't complete, which is why you end up with babies who have a mix of genitalia or a mix of reproductive organs. Biologically, there are actually 6 different genders, and it all depends on the chromosomes. So when we're talking about XX and XY. Now, if you want to do further research into that, please feel free to do so. But you can have kind of like triple X and double XY, and there's 6 different ways of doing it. But why is gender identification important to some people? It's to do with the knowledge of yourself, which affects your self-confidence. It affects the way you behave. It affects your likes and dislikes. And it also affects your mental health. And this is why it's really important to listen to your young people if they are questioning their gender. Because talking it through with someone who is just listening without judgment can really help to stabilize their mental health. Gender identification is also important because of a need to belong. We always want to belong to part of the community. We always, need to belong and have understanding. So this is why gender identification is important to some people. And they want to shout it from the rooftops, the fact that they're changing their gender identity. And that's okay, because it's their knowledge of self and their need to belong. They're not doing it to just shove something in your face. They're doing it to help themselves with their self-confidence, their understanding, and their mental health, and to belong to a community of like people. So non-binary does not identify with traditional male-female gender and could be a mix of both or neither. They often go by they, them pronouns. Now, a pronoun is something that describes a noun. So, for example, myself, I am Miss. Somebody else could be a Mr. Somebody else could be a Mrs. Somebody who is non-binary sometimes prefers to use they or them. Agender is another word. It does not identify with any specific gender. And so somebody might be non-binary or agender. That's entirely their choice. And again, they may use they, them pronouns. Trans female or trans male identifies with a different gender than given at birth. So you use the term trans, then the gender they identify with now, not their birth gender. So someone who is trans female is transitioning into a female, and they will use she and her pronouns. Trans male is someone who is transitioning into a male, and they will use he or him pronouns. Funnily enough, the term that not a lot of people know is cisgender. Now, this is actually someone who identifies with the gender they were given at birth. So, for example, I personally am cisgender. I was given the gender of female at birth, and I identify with that. I feel female. I identify with female. And though I may wear kind of hoodies and jeans and Doc Marten boots, I still feel female. That is my identity. So cisgender is someone who identifies with the gender given at birth. So going on to sexuality, this is who you actually find attractive. Okay, they're 2 different things, gender and sexuality. Attraction is a personal thing, and you can be attracted to someone without feeling sexual attraction. So if you think of friends, you could be attracted to their personality, you can be attracted to their smile, but you don't want to have sex with them. Okay, it's not a sexual attraction. You can be attracted to people that you hug because they smell wonderful, but you don't want to have sex with them. Okay, so attraction is a personal thing. And you don't need to feel sexual attraction to have attraction. Your sexuality may change over time. Sometimes this is about being accepted for the sexuality that you are feeling. And sometimes it's to do with a specific person. We have all heard of stories back in the 1940s and the 50s of men or women specifically who thought, who knew that they were homosexual, they were gay, they were lesbian, but they still got married to someone of the opposite gender, and they had children with them, and then they came out, so to speak, of the closet when they were older, after the children had grown up. And this is to do with society's acceptance of their sexuality. However, it may change over time because they haven't found the partner of a different gender that they're actually attracted to. It may be that most of the time they are attracted to someone of the opposite gender. And then one day somebody of a different gender comes along and they actually feel sexual attraction towards that specific person. So it can change over time. Some people don't feel any sexual attraction for anyone. These are called asexual. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that they don't feel sexual attraction for anybody throughout their life at all. It could be there may be one person out there that they actually have a little twinge of affection for and a sexual attraction. I think I'd really like to have sex with that person. But most of the time, they don't feel any sexual attraction for anyone. This does not mean they don't have sex. People can have sex for very different reasons. We know this, because of affairs, because of one-night stands. You don't need to have sexual attraction for a love for someone to have sexual attraction for someone. An asexual person can still feel love, but not necessarily feeling sexual attraction. So why is sexuality important for some people? Well, we have sex for more than just procreation, okay? More than just making babies. Sometimes it means, we want the intimacy of being with somebody else, of touching somebody else's body, holding someone, that kind of thing. It can also relieve stress. It's a great stress relief. Having an orgasm is brilliant if you're feeling very stressed. So that doesn't just mean that you have to have sex with someone else. It could be what we call solo sex, or some people may call it masturbation. But having an orgasm releases natural chemicals into the brain, which really help you to de-stress. And of course, we have sex because it's fun. It's supposed to be fun. And if it's not fun, stop. Sexuality is also important to some people for medical records, medicines, mental health, sexual health, all that kind of thing. So we need to know their sexuality to find out what kind of sex they're having, to give the right advice about their sexual health. Sexuality can also affect their mental health if they're not being accepted for the sexuality they feel they are. Sexuality can also affect the medication that they may need. Now, this specifically relates to people who might be having sex where they have a high risk of contracting things like HIV, syphilis, and other sexually transmitted infections. I can go into that in detail on other sessions, but if you want to know more, please feel free to look at the Terrence Higgins Trust website. So LGBT plus and other variations, so LGBT stands for lesbian, gay, bi, and trans. So bi is bisexual and trans is transitioning or transitioned. Questioning. So you may see a Q added on. It can be anyone who is not yet sure or not chosen a label. Queer is now used as an umbrella term for anyone who is not a cisgender heterosexual. So cisgender, if you remember, is someone who agrees with the gender they were given at birth. And heterosexual is someone who is attracted to somebody of the opposite gender or another gender. Bisexual is someone who feels sexual attraction to someone of the same gender and another gender, so female and male, male and non-binary, female and non-binary, etc. Now, pansexual, you may have heard of this as well. This is someone who feels sexual attraction to someone regardless of their gender. So they are attracted to the inner person regardless of their outside genitalia. And I want to remind you of the genderbread person. So remember that these can be fluctuating throughout life. These can be fluctuating from person to person. You may have a really strong identity with who you are, but your young person is still finding out who they are. So how to avoid offending someone? Think about why you need to know the answer to your question. So if it's not a medical question, you're not a medical professional asking them about medication or their gender or sexuality. You don't need to know their gender or sexuality. Now, it is inbuilt within us all to question things to make sure that we feel safe. But think about the question that you're asking. Okay, it is quite personal to ask someone, so are you male or are you female? If you don't need to know the answer to that question for a medical reason, then you don't need to know the answer to that question. Accept them for who they are, who they present to be. Do not assume. If you are unsure of how to greet or refer to someone, use their name or ask them what their preferred pronoun is, as in she, her, he, him, they, them. Don't do this in group situations, however. So, for example, if you are in a group and you're asking a preferred pronoun, it is not acceptable to do this. They may not be out to the other people in the group, and that would mean that they are forced to disclose something that they may want to keep private. So use their name. If you make a mistake, apologize and make an effort not to make the same mistake again. So being an LGBT plus ally, you don't have to be lesbian, gay, bi, trans, or anything else to support people who are LGBT plus. The way you can be an ally is to challenge language. So use things like partner instead of girlfriend or boyfriend. It can also mean a long-term partner or a short-term partner. So we always use the term partner when talking about anybody's sexuality or gender. Explain to anyone using negative words why they shouldn't be used. Okay, it is not acceptable to use the term gay in a negative way. It is not acceptable to use the term lesbian in a negative way. For example, oh right, if they don't want to go out with me, there must be a lesbian then. That is not acceptable anymore. And explain to them that they are not acceptable because it is prejudice. Explain the impact of constant banter and negative comments on mental health. So a young person who is experiencing questioning about their gender or sexuality may be getting comments at home. They may be getting comments at school. They may be getting comments at college, when they're out in town, and whoever else they are in contact with. And some people may think, oh, it's only a one-off comment and it's only a bit of banter. But if they're getting that all day, every day, it can have an extremely negative effect on their mental health. So the impact can be constantly a lack of self-confidence, constantly questioning whether the choices they have made for themselves are right for them. And it's just such a negative thing that can happen to them. So challenge the language that other people use. Challenge the language that you use yourself, and try and make sure you are as supportive as possible. Listen. Model how you want others to support people who are LGBT+. You don't need to keep up with labels. Not everybody wants to be labelled. They may change their label. You don't need to keep up with that. But call them by the name they've chosen to use. Listen to what they have to say. Ask them how you can support them more. Because, as we know, every person is different, and one LGBT person may want something different from another LGBT person. Homophobia, biphobia, transphobia, these are all prejudice and examples of bullying. If someone is experiencing this, they need to be supported. Listen to them. Take it seriously. Report it if they would like to report it through school, college, university, work discrimination policies. It should be treated as seriously as racism. It is against the Human Rights Act 2010. You can get support for a young person by going to these places. So Outreach Youth supports LGBT questioning young people and their parents and carers throughout Suffolk. There's also POP, which is run through Access Trust. I'll come back to these at the end so that you can write them down as well if you want them. Of course, we have our sexual health services in Suffolk for anybody needing any sexual health services. Obviously, actual clinics and things are appointment only at the moment. You would need to ring up early in the morning to get an appointment. Go to the website to find out for the iCash. We are obviously not opening our office at the moment, but you can get to us either through my email, which you can get through Kay, or using Sexual Health Suffolk email. And if you go to the Young and Free website, so that's www.youngandfree, which is all one word, .org.uk, you can actually find out where they can get condoms and chlamydia screens by post. They're very discreet, okay? If they are 13 to 15, this may be a problem at the moment, but you can go to your GP. They do not need to have parents' permission, by the way, just so that you know that. But they can go to their GP to talk to somebody about getting contraceptive help. I'm going to go back to these two here, just so that you can put them down. So that is actually the end of my session. Unfortunately, I've been able to finish early, so we do have time for questions if anybody would like to ask any. Obviously, I don't have access to the chat facility at the moment because I'm going to keep those up. But so, Kay, I mean, is there anything else you would like me to go over again? Has anybody put anything in the chat?
There's a comment on there just asking whether the attendees will get a copy of the PowerPoint.
Yes, I can do that, because obviously the genderbread person is a really useful tool when talking about gender and sexuality. And I think to help your understanding as well, yeah, I can do that. I can send you the PowerPoint.
Right, lovely. Okay, and we have got somebody typing at the moment. Oh, we've got brilliant can't get my words out. Brilliant slideshow. Thank you.
We have had a email into the box of a question.
Yeah.
And it said that they'd like discussed whether it's good to encourage young people to come out to wider family and friends. This is in the case where they have come out to parents and school, so it's not a secret in their immediate world.
I think that entirely depends on the person themselves. Sometimes coming out to people you feel secure with, so they've come out at school so they can be who they need to be. They've come out with parents so they can be who they need to be. But not always needing everybody else to know. That's not necessarily a thing. And sometimes it could be years between going that step further. I would like to make sure that people remember that social media can be a supportive place, but it can be such a negative place as well. And sometimes this may be the reason why people don't want to come out to the wider world or share that kind of thing with somebody else who may go on social media. And there are so many people who are prejudiced for all kinds of different reasons on social media. Let them make the choice of when they want to do it. So if you just let them know that when they want to, you are there to support them, but there's no pressure.
Okay, I'm just sending a message in the message box, just reminding if people can type their message or their question in the message box, please. So any questions at all, Addie's got time to take them. So it's like now is the opportunity. Right.
I suppose one thing I would like to know as well is, I mean, the people who have kind of logged on today, thank you very much. I mean, sorry about all the kind of the lateness at the beginning and everything, but I want to know how I have aimed this. So did you know a lot of the words before the presentation, or is it mostly new information for you? That is some feedback that I would love to know, because obviously some of the sessions where we train professionals, we get people turning up who know a lot already, but we also get people turning up who don't know anything at all. It'd be lovely to know where, you know, have I gauged this session correctly?
All right, thank you. There is a question that's come in, and there's somebody else typing another question as well, so that's good. But we've got a question here that says, how would you deal with conversations around dead names? And it says, or if somebody asks a young person about their dead name in front of you.
Yes, so basically dead naming is when you call when someone is transitioning, their dead name is the person they used to be. So I'll use my name for example. So my given name at birth was Alison. So if I was transitioning from female, which is the gender I was given at birth, into a male, I would be trans male. And if, for example, I decided that I was going to keep the Ali, but change it to maybe Alistair, dead naming would be calling me Alison, even though I now identified as Alistair. So it's when you're calling them by their original name. Now, dead naming can be extremely harmful. I suppose people who don't think about it can ask what their previous name was, but that doesn't matter. It's like, it's not like asking a married woman what her maiden name was. That's very different, because she has chosen to change her name to show her love for her new partner. It's when you're transitioning, it's like that name, your previous name, is associated with all the bad feelings you feel. So dead naming can be a very negative aspect of somebody. So dead naming is a form of prejudice. It is seen as a very rude, prejudiced question. So again, it should be challenged, and it should be, you don't need to know that about me. My name is Alistair. You know, this is my name. You don't need to know any background detail. If you're not a medical professional, it's not a legal document, you do not need to know my dead name, because that name is dead to me.
Okay, we've got another question coming, Ali. I'll read it out to you as best I can. So it says, daughter wants us to call her a different name,
Yep.
and in brackets, not a male name, as her given name is too feminine. This is very hard to deal with. Any tips? But adding on to that, it's also hard to not use she, her, and to use they, them as she wants. This does not feel like the right way to speak.
I know it can be really challenging, especially seeing as you've known that person all of their life, and you probably helped to choose that name for them because you felt a connection with them as a baby, and you felt that that was the right name for them. However, loving somebody, you also love them as they change, as they grow up. You know, teenagers go through a pimply phase, a smelly phase, and you still love them. So loving this young person means that you put that extra effort in that you would when they were going through that smelly phase too. Like I said earlier, if you make a mistake, apologize and just try to make sure you don't make it again. If you try calling them by their new name all of the time, then the more you use it, the more you will get used to it. It's a habitual thing. You've gone so many years calling them by this previous name that you loved and you thought was right for them, and now they want to change it. And that can feel quite frustrating and sometimes hurtful, but they're not doing it to hurt you. They're doing it because that's how they feel. So yes, it is challenging, and it's okay to feel frustrated and challenged by it. But you love this person, so just keep trying. In your sentences, so I'll use the Alison, Alistair example again. In your sentences, when you talk about someone, you don't have to use she, her, they, them all the time. You can say, well, actually, Alistair felt instead of they felt or she felt. And I don't know what Alistair's doing at the moment. Alistair might be instead of they might be. And just working it into conversation more and being aware of it. Your young person will find it so incredibly supportive for you taking that time and effort. It may be something that if you are in contact with people who, for example, outreach youth, if you're in contact with people who are supporting your young person through any changes, it may be something that you want to talk about with them, because you need that support as well. It's not just your young person. It is changing your life as well, and remember that. So be supportive of your young person, but remember to take care of yourself. It's okay to feel frustrated and challenged, but because you love them, you're going to go for it anyway. And the fact that you've asked this question shows that you want to be that supportive person and that you still love your young person. So just keep trying and just apologize when you do do things wrong, and just say, I'm here for you. I'm trying to support you. I'm finding it challenging, but I'm still going to keep going with it.
Just to add to that, Alison, as well, it's just making me think that, nobody ever really prepares us for children. I mean, I always think when we have our children, we develop, we're constantly developing along with them as an individual, and we're learning with them. So maybe, saying something, I don't know if you agree with this, Alison, and for just saying, I'm still learning.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we are learning all the time. There are so many kind of things, hoops that we need to jump through to vote, to get a driving license, to do all these things, and yet nobody gives us a handbook as a parent. We have to search these things out. And you know yourself, as you go through life, you change. Some changes might be more extreme than others. And just learning to cope with life itself is a huge challenge, So you deserve some love and support too. Just remember that.
We've got another question. Okay, this question is, if your child feels intersexual, the question marks there, where, I've just lost that. Where is the first point of contact to seek help?
That is an excellent question, which I don't know the answer to. So intersex, first of all, make sure that you have the terminology right. So intersex is where they have more than one genitalia, procreation. So they might have, for example, like I was talking about earlier, they might have a penis and testicles, but they might also have ovaries. So intersex is specifically to do with the biology and genitalia. It's not to do with gender or sexuality. It's the biological side. So first of all, if that's what you're talking about, I would go first of all to your GP. You can also have a look on the NHS website, and any of the websites that you go to, I'd make sure they are trusted. But those would be my first ports of call. Those would be where I would signpost you to. So NHS website and your GP. Now, some GPs don't know as much as others. If you don't get the support you are hoping from the GP you are with, try asking for a different GP to see next time.
Okay, thank you. We haven't had any more questions come in, so I think we're going to wrap it up now, if that's okay with everybody. Thank you so much for presenting today, Ali. It's been an eye-opener. I can't think of another word. An eye-opener, definitely.
Yeah, it can kind of make your head explode sometimes.
It'd be great, as you say, we've got the PowerPoint as well. It's something we can revisit, and we've got the websites, and of course, we can make contact with you if there's any further questions at all. It's having those links rather than trying to work through our understanding and our questions ourselves, when there are people out there who will be able to give advice and some guidance to us. So it's remembering that we're not all alone in our thoughts. There is support out there.
Definitely, yeah.
So a message come in and said, thank you very much. I suppose it doesn't help. I'm not keen on the new name, but don't want to tell my daughter this.
Yeah, and I can understand that. It is quite a challenge, but just keep supporting them, because you love them, and yeah, just remember that you deserve support as well. Okay,
looking after you is a top priority.
It is. Yeah.
So again, thank you very much, Ali, and thank you for all the attendees on today and for all your questions as well. We will be sending out an evaluation. We'll email that to you. So if you could kindly complete that and then email it back to us. And we look forward to seeing you for a future hub. In February, we're hoping to have Lindsay, who is from the elective home education, to answer any questions. So if it's something you're interested in, then please join us. I'll be emailing out the flyer next week, and you may also know other people, relatives, friends, neighbours who would benefit from the talk from Lindsay. So share far and wide, put it on your Facebook page, on any social media site that you've got access to, and into your schools as well, so that they can access it. But again, thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day. and the weekend. Wrap up warm. It's very cold out there.
It is so chilly.
Take